تل الربيع. شوف تم تسميتها تل الربيع بعد احتلال يافا. كانت يافا هون فصارت تل الربيع.
يعني لك يا مروان، رحت على يافا وشفتها وانبسطت فيها، بس أصدقائي بحكي لكم يعني يافا أكيد مش يافا وبس، يافا وحيفا وعكا والناصرة وكل المدن الفلسطينية اللي احتلت بال 48 رح ترجع لنا بيوم أصدقائي الأطفال.
والله يا مسافر شعلاني هالغيرة، فلسطين بلادي حلوة ما شاء الله، مي العصافة تحول عطبرية، لا عكا وحيفا اللي مع بحرها، لا تنسى الناصري هالقلعة العربية، بشر بيسان برجعة أهلها.
اوعي تعتقدي انه في واحد فلسطيني سواء اللي بيقول بحل الدولتين او اللي بيقول غير ذلك انه ممكن ان يوافق على انه هذه المستوطنات ان تكون جزءا من اسرائيل، وحيفا ويافا وعكا مش فلسطينيه. لا، حيفا ويافا وعكا والناصرة فلسطينية غصبا عن الامريكان وغصبا عن الاسرائيليين.
لكن نحن في مدارسنا نعلم ما يمليه علينا ديننا وضميرنا بان القدس هي عربيه، وان فلسطين من شمالها لجنوبها من نهرها لبحرها هي عربيه فلسطينيه اسلاميه، وستبقى كذلك رغم انف هذا المحتل البعيد.
هي يعني اسرائيل هي ارضنا،
اسرائيل ارضنا، ارض 42
هي ارضنا، هي فلسطين المحتله
48
ارضنا فلسطين المحتله. برافو عليك. هي حيفا يافا عكا هي اراضينا المحتله، اراضي 48 اللي احتلتها اسرائيل ب 48 احتلتها اسرائيل ب 48 هي اراضي فلسطينيه، رح تضلها فلسطينيه وان شاء الله رح ترجع لنا بيوم وتبطل تحت سيطره الاحتلال.
For several decades now, politicians, clerics and school teachers living in the areas known as the Gaza Strip, the West Bank and East Jerusalem have been teaching their children, teenagers and young adults that the whole of the land of Israel in fact belongs to the Arab people who are today known as the Palestinians. This claim is widely propagated throughout the Palestinian media and education system and further afield in Muslim-dominated countries in the Middle East. The claim goes on to assert that the Jewish people have no historic connection with Jerusalem and that they are in fact trying to Judaize the holy city and that the Jewish presence there is illegal. Moreover, this claim is now becoming widely believed among many in the Western world. So what historic and legal claim do the Palestinian Arabs have over Jerusalem and the land of Israel? Jewish writings dating back over 2,000 years, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, confirm there was a historic Jewish presence here in Jerusalem well before the time of Christ. Archaeological sites such as this confirm that fact. Christian records confirm that a Jewish temple stood up there on what the Palestinians call Haram al-Sharif, or the Temple Mount, at the time of Christ. Jewish historical records show that Jerusalem was in fact the capital city of the people of Israel 1,000 years before Christ. Extra-biblical records, for example, what is known as the Cyrus Cylinder from the ancient Persian Empire, which is now housed in the British Museum, confirm that King Cyrus gave permission for the Jews to return to their capital city, Jerusalem, to rebuild the temple that had been destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. These stone steps date back to the time of King Herod, and there are many other examples of Herodian structures across the Middle East. Even Islamic sources, such as this publication dating back to 1924, when the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem was in charge of the Haram al-Sharif in the British Mandate period, acknowledges that there had once been a Jewish temple standing here, and these steps, these stone steps, lead up to it. In the year 70 AD, the Romans destroyed not only the temple, but the entire Jewish capital was destroyed too. The historian Josephus Flavius records that more than 1 million inhabitants of Jerusalem were killed, and the rest were taken off to Rome as slaves. So how did the Jewish homeland, the land of Israel, come to be known as Palestine?
Palestine is not even the original name of the land that is denominated Palestinian land. Palestine is not a Hebrew word, it's not an Arab word, it's a Roman word. That land was originally Eretz Israel. It took the name of Palestine under later occupations.
The original name is Plishtim from the Bible, or Philistines. But they were in the coastal area, basically nothing to do with the name Palestine. Palestine was reused as Palestine as we know it today by Hadrian when he occupied the country in 135 following the Bar Kokhba revolt. He really wanted that the Judea will be forgotten. And that is the main reason why he changed the name to Palestina, to Palestine.
The final Jewish rebellion against Rome in the early 2nd century, known as the Bar Kokhba uprising, was brutally quashed by the Romans. Jews were barred from entering their ancient capital city, Jerusalem, until the 4th century. Even though most Jews had either been killed by the Romans or exiled and taken off as slaves, there were small Jewish communities scattered across other parts of the Jewish homeland.
If it had not been for the diaspora, the vast majority of the population would have been Jewish. It was Christian before the Muslim armies invaded, and gradually over the years, the Jews had gone mostly to Europe. Some had stayed behind and always been in Jewish prisons.
For example, there was a continuous Jewish community living in Hebron from the time of the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BC until the British expelled them in 1929. Other Jewish communities thrived for many centuries in places like Tiberias and Safed in the Galilee. From the 4th century onwards, the land that had been renamed as Palestine by the Romans was under the domination of the Byzantine Empire when the Cardo here was built. This was the main thoroughfare through Byzantine Jerusalem. Jews throughout the empire were regarded as second-class citizens, including in Palestine, which was part of the province of Syria.
There's no real Arab connection until the 7th century, maybe a little bit before that with the Nabateans. But basically what happens is in the 7th century, starting in just a couple of years after the death of Muhammad in 632, then Arab armies come in and they conquer the whole of Syria. They go on to conquer most of the rest of the known world at the time.
The invading Arabs brought with them a new religion, Islam, and the Byzantine Empire started to go into decline. By the Middle Ages, a Jewish community had been firmly re-established here in Jerusalem. Historical records show that there were massacres of both Jews and Muslims here during the Crusades.